All right, buckle up because we're diving into the moment when Massachusetts decided, hey, maybe we should have a rule book for this whole government thing. The year is 1780, and after years of revolutionary chaos and just winging it tactics, the state finally gets its act together to ratify its very own constitution. Let's take a look at how this all unfolded and how it turned into one of the quirkiest chapters in the American Revolution. Picture this. It's 1780, and Massachusetts is dealing with more problems than they can shake a musket at. Soldiers are grumbling about not getting paid. Farmers are wondering why their hard-earned crops don't seem to buy as much, and the continental dollar is dropping in value faster than you can say inflation. To top it off, everyone is arguing over who should be in charge and what authority they actually have. Yeah, that's right. Massachusetts was a mess. The idea of writing a constitution seemed like a logical solution, but who would write it? And what exactly should it say? Keep in mind, the people running things in Massachusetts didn't exactly have much experience with democracy. Their previous rulebook was a whole different vibe. Royal governors, British appointed officials, and laws that mostly told you what you couldn't do. Now they're aiming for a constitution that actually represents the people. Ambitious, right? At the heart of this revolution within a revolution was a man named John Adams. You may know him from his more famous gigs, signer of the Declaration, future president, that guy who's always kind of grumpy in portraits. Well, in 1780, he was Massachusetts' answer to every legal and philosophical question about what a government should look like. Adams was basically like, hold my quill! He sat down and hammered out a framework that would stand the test of time. And he didn't just scribble out a few vague ideas. No, this was Adams we're talking about. The guy wrote a full-on treatise. He proposed a government with 3 branches, an executive, a legislature, and a judiciary. Sound familiar? Yeah, it was groundbreaking at the time, but today it's literally politics 101. He was out here pioneering separation of powers like a founding father rock star. Now, here's where things get a little weird. You see, the people of Massachusetts weren't quite ready for John Adams' brilliance. He presented his constitution draft, and instead of a standing ovation, he got skepticism. Some people thought it was too complicated. Others didn't like that it gave the governor veto power, or that voting rights were still a bit restricted. And still others were probably thinking, can't we just go back to farming and not worry about this government stuff? But Adams was persistent. He knew that a strong government framework was essential if Massachusetts, and by extension the colonies, were going to survive the upheaval of independence. So after some classic 18th century debating, think less shouting, and more really intense letter writing, Adams' draft was refined and adjusted until it finally gained enough support to move forward. In June 1780, the Massachusetts Constitution was finally ratified. And let's just say, it was a big deal. This wasn't just a new set of rules. This was the model of state governance that would influence every other state constitution after it. And to be fair, it was probably one of the most comprehensive attempts at democracy the world has seen up to that point. The Constitution included a Declaration of Rights, which laid out all sorts of lofty ideals about freedom, liberty, and justice. The kind of stuff you'd expect from a bunch of people who just told the British Empire to take a hike. It established checks and balances, detailed the powers of the governor, and set up a system of representation in the state legislature. It even set up a system for amendments, acknowledging that, hey, maybe they didn't have all the answers and someone in the future might want to tweak things a bit. It was revolutionary, it was bold, and it was kind of funny too. Why? Because Massachusetts was still figuring things out as they went along. You could almost imagine Adams and his contemporaries saying, well, let's give this a shot and hope it works. So what was the legacy of Massachusetts Constitution? For starters, it's the oldest functioning written constitution in the world. No biggie, right? While other states would continue to tweak and update their constitutions, Massachusetts stuck with what Adams and his crew had come up with in 1780, with only minor adjustments along the way. And the influence? Oh, it went way beyond Massachusetts. Other states looked at what Massachusetts had done and thought, yeah, that actually seems pretty smart. Even the framers of the US Constitution, just a few years later, took a few notes from Adams' playbook. In a weird twist of fate, a bunch of people who had no idea what they were doing somehow set the foundation for American democracy. Let's not forget the people's reaction, though. To say everyone immediately understood the gravity of this Constitution would be giving them too much credit. In reality, many folks in Massachusetts probably skimmed through the document and thought, well, as long as we don't have to answer to a king, sounds fine. For others, the real priority was just getting back to some sense of normalcy, maybe even finding a way to make a few bucks amidst the chaos of war. But for all its quirks and all its unpolished bits, the Massachusetts Constitution held up. It worked. And as funny as it might seem, this moment was a major leap forward in American self-governance. These people were essentially winging it, yet they managed to create a system that outlasted even their wildest expectations. So there you have it. Massachusetts in 1780 went from revolutionary battleground to a beacon of constitutional democracy. Thanks to John Adams and a ragtag group of thinkers, the state went from chaos to relative order. And yes, they did it with a bit of awkwardness, a fair share of skepticism, and probably a few too many "wait, we're doing what" moments along the way. And who would have guessed? That scrappy little document became the bedrock of what we consider modern governance today.